Hey YouTube, coming at you with my new series again, looking at Pokemon Go history and how Pokemon became meta relevant, or where meta relevant became irrelevant, or like Skarmory and like Azumarill were super meta relevant, became irrelevant, and then became meta again. So I'm gonna go over Azumarill in this one. I'm gonna go over like kind of what I did last time, what made it so strong when it first came out. It's how it played against the early matchups, kind of what happened in the mid game when it got nerfed, and then how it's sort of back again as a top 15 Pokemon. So, Azumarill has many benefits. The first one being its stat product, right? Super low attack, super high defense and stamina, 93.7, 134, 190 for 2387 overall, right? So you have in GBL, you automatically have a benefit if you have, unless you like a Chansey or a Blissey that doesn't have any sort of moveset associated in it. If you have the stat products that look like this with a decent moveset, you automatically become a top meta Pokemon, right? And that's the same with, we look at 2387, right? This is what happened with Noctowl before Skytack got, I'll go over Noctowl another day, right? 2114, this is what happened with Lantern when it got a good move. 2131 with the high stamina, this was what happened with Medi. 140 for 2100 overall, right? So that's sort of like, and then the Registeel, obviously same sort of thing as a number one ranked Pokemon, high defense, high overall stat product. That's kind of where Azumarill starts with strengths. Super low attack, but a very high stamina, overall high stat product. Its movesets are interesting. So Bubble, and this will go into the history. I'll talk about the history of, this was the first time that Niantic actually specifically nerfed a move to nerf a Pokemon, was Bubble. So, and they rebuffed it after. So you're looking at what it was in the first season. It's a 3-turn move, 3.67 energy per turn, 3.2 damage per turn. Not an amazing move by any means necessary. It's a 3-turn moves, which are always so clunky. The damage is not overpowering at all. Energy is not bad. 3.67 is not terrible energy, but it's not great energy. Your moves, you have 3 moves, and not a problem. These 3 moves provide you insane coverage. I find that whenever you use this Pokemon, you almost always want the 3rd move that you can't have, because they really do cover each other so well, but not when only 2 of them are in play. So for example, if you just run Ice Beam Play Rough, you have nothing to throw at Steels. If you run Play Rough Hydro Pump, you're going to have problems with like Poison Grass. You'll have nothing to throw Poison Grass because Poison resists the Fairy and then Hydro resists that. And then if you run Ice Beam Hydro, you have nothing to throw at Waters and like Lantern. So no matter what 2 moves you use, you will always have a limitation against a certain Pokemon, which has always been one of the drawbacks of Azumarill. In terms of the move themselves, overall though, pretty good coverage, decent moves, right? Ice Beam is your quickest one. I guess one of the drawbacks is whenever you use this Pokemon, I always find it slow and clunky, and it's very easy to play against, and it's very easy to kind of use because it's just like, it's annoying to use, but it's easy to use because it's just like Bubble, 3-turn move, and then you get to the Ice Beam 5, Play Rough 6, Hydro 7, right? So it's a very easy Pokemon to use. But 5 bubbles to get to your first move feels a little slow at times. 55 energy, 90 damage, 1.64, not amazing, not the worst, but not great. But then when you get into Play Rough with Stab, 60 for 108 and 1.8 damage per energy, and then Hydro, 75 for 156, 2.08. So nice charge moves, Play Rough, Hydro Pump for sure. Ice Beam is more sort of coverage move as a non-stab move. Its typing is something that I think benefited back in the day, because with the fairy you pick up a poison weakness, but back in the day, as you're going to see by the list, there wasn't a lot of poison. So primarily you're just dealing with your other 2 weaknesses, grass and electric. Again, not a ton of electric back in the day, and then grass, there was an okay amount, but not a ton, right? So you didn't have a ton of things coming after you, but your resistances were very big back in the day specifically, because Dragon, and we're going to go over the list of the early on Pokemon, but like Dragon, Altaria, double resist. Other water Pokemon, Swampert, you resist. Ice, wasn't a ton of ice back in the day. Fire, Marowak, you resist. Fighting, Machamp, and other fighters, you resist. Dark, Umbreon, and Sableye, you resist. Bug, there wasn't a ton of bug back in the day either. So chalk up a lot of resistances of what was the main meta. So you had great stat product, okay move set overall, nothing huge. But what really benefited back in the day is the stat product. When we look at the first, I can't look at all the stat products here, but when you look at the Pokemon, first things first is I put in, you're going to see specific IVs, 10, 15, 15 for 38.5. And I forgot to upload that picture. Let me see if I can just upload it right now. Sorry for my background. Just call it whatever. Download this picture. Here it is. This picture pretty much shows what a lot of older GBL players had to do back in the day. You're going to see I have Azumarill 10, 15, 15, level 38.5, a Sableye at level 40 at 15, 15, 12, and then a Medi at level 40, 14, 14, 15. So before XLs were a thing, you had to build these Pokemon up to as high as you can get to level 40 because you couldn't go more than that. So stuff like Medi and Sableye were underpowered, yet Azumarill could get almost maximum bulk. Mine's 10, 15, 15. You could maximum bulk go up right to level 40 as Azumarill back in the day. And now we've all had to build new ones to make it accessible there. So those are all 38.5, so I recognize that on these as well. I don't think I did the Sableye one, because no, it was not a 45.5. It was like a, what I have, like a 12, 15, 15, something like that. Let's say 39. Umbreon, Skarmory, Swampert, Machamp, Shifter, Hypno, Cresselia, and Polion. Okay, the rest should be fine. So I don't even think the summary of the records tells you how strong this Pokemon was back then. So 7, 6, and 1 is a positive record. The 500, 508, 520, 531, all above 500 averages, right? So on average, you were beating most things. But it really was just like you beat so many things. Medi, Altaria, Sableye, Umbreon, the Swampert, the Machamp. You would lose to the grass, but even at grass you had answers for. And then even some of these like other matchups like Hypno and stuff were closer than they appear on the thing. And that's the thing. Back in the day, Azumarill was the go-to safe swap because you could safe swap it, and with like a bubble advantage, maybe even 2 bubbles advantage, in the 2+ shields, you were often, I don't know if it'll reflect in the 2 shields. Here, let's check it out. No, it looks like it's even worse here in the 2. Oh no, some are better, some are worse. Or is it in the 0 shields? It just seemed like in a lot of situations, in the 0 shields, it just shows its domination, right? You could just outbulk a lot of these Pokemon back in the day. Then what happened was Niantic has recently made it more of a thing where they're directing nerfs on moves to affect certain Pokemon at the sort of effect of other Pokemon. So some of those recent ones are Breaking Swipe, right? This was a direct attack on Steelix, but it has effects on like Haxorus or Rayquaza, Heliolisk. So that nerf on Breaking Swipe was an attack on Steelix that affected all those other Pokemon. Sky Attack is an obvious one. Sky Attack was a direct attack on Noctowl because Noctowl was everywhere, but it had an effect on Skarmory and Altaria, and they had to like change Skarmory to Steel Wing to make. I went over that in yesterday's video because they nerfed Sky Attack, which made it much, much worse. So they had to give it Steel Wing or else it's kind of useless. So next, that was a direct attack on that. Bubble was the first direct attack of a move to lower Pokemon. Azumarill was the #1 ranked Pokemon in GBL for 8 straight seasons. And because of that, they needed to attack it because it was, and they nerfed Bubble. So I'm pretty sure they nerfed Bubble by, I'm pretty sure it's damage output. Yeah. So they nerfed the Bubble by 1 damage output. So that 3.2 damage per energy, damage per turn would probably drop to like 2.8, 2.9, something like that damage per turn. So you lowered the damage of Azumarill. It knocked it down, but not enough to knock it out yet. And then we got two things: XL Pokemon and new Pokemon. So in terms of XL Pokemon, Azumarill actually benefited from this, right? Because you went from a level 38 Azumarill to now getting up to like a level, you can get as high as level 50 if you want, right? So it is one that is already very bulky, benefits from the level 50. In terms of Pokemon, I'm going to argue that the Pokemon that have been introduced over the seasons have hurt Azumarill, and that's why it's kind of dropped. So you have sort of, just look at the top Pokemon. Registeel has always been around, but Registeel used to have Flash Cannon and now has Zap Cannon. Way better. Lickitung, everyone had soon had access to Lickitung with Power Whip. Answer there. Lantern, right? If you don't run Play Rough, you're walled completely. And even if you do run Play Rough, you're in pretty big trouble there with Lantern. And even some of these other matchups, like the Medi matchup was ridiculous because before they nerfed Psychic to nerf Medi, like that matchup against Azumarill was actually way closer than you'd want it. And it came down to like, you had a bunch of Pokemon, and then like Trevenant, I didn't even cover the grass, but like Superior was everywhere. Trevenant was everywhere. Then there was an introduction to a lot of poison Pokemon, right? Toxapex, doesn't matter what move you ran, Ice Beam, Play Rough, Hydro Pump, all resisted by Toxapex. Clodsire is at least neutral because it's half ground. But like Drapion came in, Nidoqueen was everywhere. So you had this uptick in poison, you had an uptick in grass, and you had an uptick in Pokemon that just resisted all your movesets. Combine that with the nerf on Bubble, Azumarill dropped to like 20 to 30. And again, there's been how many seasons of GBL? Like 16, 17? I think that it was like top number 1 for 8 straight seasons. That nerf to Bubble dropped it to like number 5. And it was still number 5 for a couple seasons. And then the meta switched to like Lantern and Registeel and stuff like that. So then it dropped to like 30. And it's 30 still pretty good. But it was just, it kind of disappeared because there was no real reason to drop it, to use it anymore because there's so many things that countered it in the meta. They finally buffed it back up. So they buffed it back up. There's been an increase in sort of fighters, Annihilate and Poliwrath in this meta. There's been an increase in ground Pokemon like Gligar. A couple more dragons like Guzzlord and Dragonite. So all of a sudden, you now have this Pokemon coming back. So the overall record is, again, looks better than it did originally, right? You have higher win versus loss total. You have a higher overall average. You're positive overall. Again, you're going to get killed by the grass. There's not much you can do there. But a lot of these others, and steals are going to be problem. But overall, and like I said, Lantern, Lickitung, those are the two that kind of came in that really hurt you. But overall, like, yes, you'll lose to a lot of things that have grass, but other than that, grass and then the walls and like Lantern and Registeel and then Lickitung with the Power Whip, you're good. You're good with Azumarill. So that is sort of what happened to Azumarill. It is now, what I say, ranked 12, 14? 14, right? So it was number 1 ranked for 8 seasons. It dropped to like 5 to 10. It dropped to like 30-ish, top 30 for like maybe 3 or 4 seasons. And now it's back to number 14 because they rebuffed Bubble. And again, Bubble affects Azumarill the most. There are other Pokemon that run Bubble. None that you would actually... Sometimes you use Jellicent with Bubble in like the Ultra League if you want to try and draw out like a normal typing or dark. But for the most part, the Bubble is not really used. So the buff to Bubble was actually just a direct get Azumarill back up to where it was because there had been an uptick in fighters everywhere. And fighters were dominating the meta. So it came back up from that perspective. So that is Azumarill. That's the history of it. That's why it was very strong. And it's still sort of strong now just because the stat product alone with a decent moveset, as long as you have a decent moveset, which the charge moves I would argue are decent enough to overcome what is not a great fast move in Bubble, but decent. The stat product, your typing, and the moveset is enough to make this relevant for many, many times to come. Like I said, extremely bulky, extremely defensive. Inflexible, which I went over this definition the other way, may struggle to hit multiple types, which is, again, the biggest drawback, right? Because you can get, depending on your moveset, you will get walled. And I went over that example of like not having Play Rough for Lantern, or not having Hydro Pump for Steels, or not having anything for Toxapex, right? You will struggle against multiple typings depending on the moves you choose. And then may struggle to draw shields because of its weaker or slower attacks. And it's kind of both. Like I said, Bubble is not a fast charging move, and you're so defensive heavy and your attack is so low that you're often, even with the Hydro Pumps kind of hurt, but like you can live Play Roughs and Ice Beams with each. You never have to be worried about one move taking you out. Even like Darks often live a Play Rough from a Fairy type here. Because you're just such, you're low, your attack, which takes your attack stat, which is takes into consideration how much damage your move does, is so low that when you multiply it by Play Rough, like the damage output, it's threatening. Sure, if you're like a dark, you don't want to take a Play Rough from a Azumarill, but a lot of times you'll live at least one, which kind of makes it low shield pressure there. How are you going to pair it? So it's interesting because you got to watch out for 3 typings here: electric, grass, poison. But like I said, you also primarily, like, those are your weaknesses. But I wouldn't even argue you're building for your weaknesses. You're building for the Pokemon that will just cause you the biggest amount of problems, and that is like Registeel as a steel, and Lantern as an electric water, which I guess electric is on here, and then Toxapex as a poison on here. So like you're basically going for like a few Pokemon that would absolutely wall you, as opposed to the general thing. Because like a lot of the poison, so like you're weak to poison, poison, grass, and electric. Electric, there's not much you can do about, but grass, you have Ice Beam, and poison, a lot of these poisons are also half ground, right? Clodsire, half ground. Venusaur is grass, you have the Ice Beam for. Golbat is a flyer, you have the ice for. Sneasler is a fighter, you have Play Rough for. Trigology is a dragon. Where's Nidoqueen, half ground, right? So a lot of these poison Pokemon you already have answers for. So in terms of like why they're recommending these Pokemon, I think I would argue that they are recommending for sure Stunfisk and Annihilate to deal with your steals, like primarily like Registeel as one of the biggest answers to you here, right? If you look at the losses, you got Cresselia because it's got the grass. You got Lantern because it's it's just going to wall you. It's electric. And then Registeel is one of your biggest losses here. And then Skarmory as the other steel, right? Skarmory as your other steel is beating you down the board there. And then grass is going to kill you. So they're saying Annihilate and Stunfisk to deal with that steel issue that you're going to see. Then you got Charjabug, Cresselia, and Lickitung. And I argue that Cresselia is Charjabug is a nice answer for your grass and electric, because you're going to resist the electric and you're going to resist grass. And with grass, you have the X Scissor. You can hit super effective for this, that. And then electric, you resist the electric, and you can, as long as it's not like a Togedemaru, which is half steel, most electric that aren't half steel, that isn't half steel, you can hit for at least neutral with the X Scissors. Cresselia is on here because it is now, especially running with Future Sight. Future Sight's going to deal with a lot of the poisons, right? Hitting super effective Future Sight, and the Lickitung is just Lickitung because it's so safe and so good. So when you're building this Pokemon, if I'm building this Pokemon, I'm almost always building for like just pure steals. I would probably pair it with a fighter often. The problem is if you pair it with a fighter, some of these poison will resist the fighting and it will resist the thing. So Stunfisk, I could see that argument that Stunfisk is probably a better pairing than a fighter. And then yeah, you probably pair it with, yeah, you know what? I would go Stunfisk. Now that I'm thinking about it more, I'd probably go Stunfisk because of the, like the talk specs or something like that. I would just want an answer to poison immediately. So Azumarill, Stunfisk, and then you can do one of two things. You can use, I was gonna say you can use a balanced team with a safe swap like Lickitung, right? That's why Lickitung is there, because you can use it as a safe swap. The other thing, I was going to say you can use Azumarill as a safe swap, but I've kind of gotten over why you can't do that anymore. Back in the day, yes. Back in the day when your meta was Medi and Altaria and Sableye and Umbreon and Registeel, and Skarmory and Swampert, even Shiftry as your main grass, or Cresselia, Hypno that have grass. I mean, like, Hypno has Thunder Punch and Cresselia has Grass Knot. Even if you safe swap and use those Pokemon as use Azumarill as your safe swap, it's not like you'll get walled. You can very much chip. If you do different shield scenario, you can either come out with shield advantage or you can flip switch and stuff like that. So Azumarill back in the day used to be an amazing safe swap. I would not feel comfortable using it as a safe swap anymore. I think there's just too many Pokemon. Again, some are not even showing up on this list. Like Toxapex is not on this list. Let's just put like Toxapex in, because it would actually, well, I've already gone over Lantern, how strong that is, but like getting a Toxapex like 100 there. You have Shadow Vic and Venusaur. Yeah, I guess to a certain extent you got to watch out for those, but you kind of always watching out for those. And then just a Lantern, having a Pokemon, even with Play Rough here and in the back here, it's still just getting killed. So I wouldn't feel as confident using Azumarill as a safe swap as you would back in the day. I think it's a strong Pokemon. I think it will always be strong. I mean, they rebuffed it, so it wasn't as strong as it is now, but they rebuffed Bubble to make it strong again. I think just given its stat products and its moveset and its typing, it will always be strong in this meta. It's not, like this alone, this stat product, unless they would need to significantly nerf not only just Bubble, because if they nerf Bubble again, it would be down to like 30, 40 ranking, but it'd still be top 40 just because you can get by on your stat product, your typing, and your charge moves alone. So it will always be around. That being said, just clunky. Just the only way I can describe this is, it is a 3-turn move. It feels worse using this 3-turn move than it does using like 4-turn moves. It just like it feels like an eternity to get to those bubbles, get those complete, and get to the charge moves, and that's why I say it's clunky. It's a clunky, again, plenty of Pokemon have 3-turn moves. If we go to moves here, we're in fast moves. There are plenty of 3-turn moves. But again, Air Slash just kind of we're not using Air Slash as much anymore, but like Bubble, Bullet Seed, Charm is a 3-turn move, Dragon Tail. Trying to see which ones are actually people are using a lot. Rollout, Smackdown if you're just gonna smack stuff down. Snarl with Umbreon I think is one of the main ones that people use. So you know what? There's actually not as many 3-turn moves as I remember, but there's a decent amount of 4-turn moves that are moves, right? Volt Switch, Confusion, Gust, and it feels like this is a 3-turn move. Just feels worse using than a 4-turn move, quite honestly. And I think it's just like the poke. I think it's because with the 4-turn move, obviously the damage is more. First of all, the damage per energy on these 4-turn moves are all more than Bubble, right? So there's your there's without stab 2.6 damage per turn, whereas without stab, Volt Switch 3, Gust, Confusion 4. So these 4-turn moves are doing way more damage, and then because it's a longer duration move, you'll see the damage add up more. Whereas opposed to Bubble, which is a 2.6 terrible damage per turn, combined with Azumarill's low attack, just makes it feel like, oh, this is not doing enough to justify using you, but again, you make up for it in the other areas of defensiveness and stuff like that. So that is the history. That is the history of Azumarill, why it's been meta since season 1, and why it will always be meta unless they go after. They'd have to go after Bubble again. They just rebuffed Bubble, so there's no way they're going to nerf Bubble. they'd have to go after, like, if they truly just want to put it outside the top 100 rankings, just like completely nerf into the ground, they'd have to nerf Ice Beam, Play Rough, and Hydro Pump combo, and you can't, right? There's always effects. So Ice Beam is also on for Alligator, Mantine. Most people don't use it on Jellicent, stuff like that. And then Play Rough. That's not how you spell Play Rough. Play Rough. Dedenne. How can you make Dedenne even worse? Right, Ryan Swag. Glaring Wheezing. And then Hydro Pump. I don't think Hydro Pump is used by much at all. No, it's not even the recommended moveset on Azumarill. Most of these are never going to use Hydro Pump. It's just too long to get to a move, right? So even like nerfing it is not going to affect a lot of Pokemon much anyway. So maybe they go after, again, I don't think Azumarill needs nerfing, just based on the fact that there are so many, like Lantern and Toxapex, there's so many hard answers out there right now that when you can get like completely walled and just killed by certain Pokemon, nerfing the Pokemon even more just seems like overkill. So I think it's like I think it's accurate for what it is in the meta right now. Anyways, like I said, this series is something I just created off the top of my head. Sunday, I'm going to put out a bunch more of these this week because people seem to like it, and Jungle Cup is just getting stale. That being said, probably next week, because Great League is back next week, when I'm doing these showcases, I will get some battles for you. Yeah, so next week when Great League is on, I'll make sure I use Pokemon that if I'm going to highlight them, I can showcase a couple battles just to show its strength and weaknesses. But otherwise, that is it. So thanks for watching. Hope you're enjoying these, and I'll see you guys in the next one.